Now, as a youth in tech, you can expect to work in a fast-paced, dynamic environment that is constantly evolving, because that's what tech is about. You need to stay up to date on the latest technologies and the latest trends and be prepared to adapt to new challenges as they arise. However, the benefits of working in tech can be substantial, from competitive salaries and opportunities to career advancement to the satisfaction of being at the forefront of innovation and change. And that's what every youth wants. Now, in today's digital world, technology plays a crucial role in shaping our society and our politics. Now, we are going to be looking at this show together, and it's important to consider the impact of technology on the issues and the discussions that we'll be addressing, from privacy concerns and cybersecurity to the role of social media in shaping public opinions. That said, I'm now joined by my guest, Otis Umude, the CEO, iFem International. Thank you so much, Otis, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
He's also the creator of Go Speed Hub. Thank you, Otis, once again.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We're talking about launching into the tech space and generally just tackling unemployment through tech. Now, as a tech person yourself, how has technology influenced the political landscape in recent years?
Well, you look at, I think last election we had the system that electronic voting. Now, in this part of the world, you could clearly see how there was a little bit of issue, but we can see how that system can work. But in other part of the world, technology has been introduced in the voting system, in registration, without being there. Also, voting absentee ballots. Without you being in your state, you can actually vote, and your vote will count. So those are ways that technology has been introduced when it comes to in the political arena.
So for youth who are still thinking of what path they want to take, what would you say, how best would you say they can decide which path they want to tour in life?
So there are multiple different fields to go in. The mistake most individuals make is when someone has a training or someone goes through a training course and start working and say, oh, I'm making money, I'm doing cybersecurity, and they jump into it. The best approach is to find out what fields are available out there. You have cybersecurity, you have data analyst, you have a cloud engineer, you have AI engineer, IoT engineer, a few others around there like project management, and a few others around. So what the best approach is, find out what each one of those fields involve. What is the day-to-day job like? What is the certification requirement, the degree requirement? And also, what's the pay like? You want to make sure the pay fits what you're doing. What's the career advancement if you're looking to go up the lane of the chain of command? So these are things you want to really study and see which one suits you best. Making money is great, but if you're not fulfilled in doing what you're doing, then you're going to be miserable, right? Mm-hmm. So it's always best to find out what each one really takes and know that your day-to-day job is something that you can easily do when you embark on that journey.
And as a person in tech as well, what can youths expect, with working as a tech person, both the good sides and the bad sides and the challenging sides?
Well, there are some drawbacks if you're in Nigeria. We actually have a tech firm in the US, and that's where I'm based. And the one advantage we have is uninterrupted power supply and uninterrupted data. So we could be anywhere, anytime, and we could just do our work. But in Nigeria, we do have a limitation here and there, which we've seen an increase of solar to kind of combat power, and we're seeing a few other data connections that are more steady to give you that uninterrupted supply of internet. So the one advantage in working in the tech field is you could work almost anywhere in the world. All you need, again, like I said, is power and internet connection, and you could do your job. The other advantage is the pay is quite lucrative, and depending on what industry you go in, there is job security also. Not just only within the country, but you could be in Nigeria and be hired almost anywhere in the world.
Okay, but in looking at African countries, for example, what would you say are the major drawbacks that hinder people from considering tech?
Number one is education. I think we don't educate our people enough on where the industry is going, what the new world order looks like. As we all know, those who are in the tech space, they will tell you data is king. It's no longer gold. The more data every company have of their customer, of their client, the more they can upsell or introduce new products. So when you look at data, what the data involves, right? You want to mine that data of your customers, understand them very well to know how to sell. That means you need a storage, that's cloud engineer. You want to also protect their data from being compromised, that's cybersecurity. You want to run some analytics to understand their behavior, their habits. That's where data mining comes in and data scientist comes in. You want to also do some predictive modeling based on habits of where they're going to do in the future. That's AI right there. So I'm just giving you just in one area, you can see how many fields are involved in that. I think more training, more podcasts, and more news like this, telling people what is out there, what the future looks like, and so they can be more informed and more aware of where they want to take their career to.
All right, now I want to believe that people do not just dabble into tech. What are the step-by-step procedures of getting, let's say, a youth out there wants to go into tech and doesn't even know where to start from? What are the processes of getting into tech industry?
So we're in a digital age right now where you could almost get some level of training for free. Not all, but some level. The first place I always say to start is either ask a friend or you go on YouTube. Just type YouTube and Google and just ask any question. How to start a tech career, how to embark on this journey. And you will see a guide that kind of shows you the fields that are out there related to tech. Now, the one good thing about tech is it falls in almost any industry. You know, in the healthcare sector, in finance, in education, you know, in pharmaceutical, in a few other, in politics also too. So you want to look at it from that standpoint. Once you see the different fields that are out there, you want to do a deep dive and watch a few videos of what each one takes. Once you've done that, the next step you might want to do is look for a mentor. Look for CEOs, executives who are in that field, kind of follow the social media, follow the company social media handles to see what they're out there. And then look for reputable training programs. Sometimes some of this pathway you're trying to take, they have certifications. So you want to look for those schools that offer those training and certifications and also follow them and see what they have available and the free resources available to you so you can actually use that to get a better understanding of where you want to go. So once you've done that, now you've narrowed down the few fields you might be interested in. This is where you need to sit down with a mentor, a coach, life coach, or career and kind of tell them what you want to do. And based on your personality, on the income you're looking for, the lifestyle you want to live, the work flexibility, if there is any, to kind of embark in that journey. So that's the kind of steps you want to take.
All right. Now, still talking about going into tech and the confusion that surrounds it, there has been a debate as to how a youth can balance the passion they have with the need for financial growth, if you know what I mean. That's talking about either going for passion or going for money, when you know that when you go for passion, it's not so easy. It's not going to be a smooth ride, you know. So a lot of times people just gear towards doing something because of the financial benefits associated with it. What would you have to say about that?
So this is one thing that always come up every single time I'm being asked. Passion or money? Everyone is at a different phase of their life. Some individuals might be living with someone where they're not paying any rent or paying any bills, so they might have the enough time to actually chase their passion and go after that for a few years before start seeing the money come. Some would feel, I'm all alone, I have no help, I need to make that money immediately to get going. So, end of the day, I always say this, I know it's hard in this part of the world, but the one thing I always say is your passion is always first. Yes, you're going for the money, you want to earn a good living, you want to earn a good lifestyle, but I've seen people who make lots of money and are still miserable because they're not chasing their passion, they're not doing what drives them. You can make all the money, but when you look back and see, does that really give you fulfillment, does it really give you satisfaction? If that works for you, then that's fine, but most end up, when you chase your passion, the days when the struggle comes, when you're having an issue at work, what you know is your passion, you could ride those waves because you're in it for the long run. But if it's just after the money, you could easily quit and give up, which is what we see some people doing sometimes. So it's again, I'm not going to direct anybody in one way or the other, but it's always advisable to look and see at your current situation and see what is best for you. But in the long run, always try and chase your passion.
All right, now talking about the technology in itself, right? We see that technology has helped in a lot of ways in this generation, but there's still some areas or there's some people who still do not have access to technology as they should. How can the government or the society balance up that equation where some people have access to more technology or more access to technology than others? And this is how, when you have equal access, that's how youths can make informed decision as to whether or not. You can't tell people who do not even have access to technology to go into the tech space. So what is your thought on that?
So my thought on that is it's going to be more of a government and private sector. The government alone cannot do it. If you look around the world, the government alone have not been able to sustain any country without the private investors coming in. But where the government can come in is have all these major firms who are invested in this company to have a certain percentage of doing training, hands-on training, going to the community in the most remote area and doing demonstration of different gadgets that they have. I still do right now, go to conferences, seminars, webinars, and most of those that I do in the US, they are more hands-on training. So I get to feel gadgets like 3D glasses, 3D printing, the new Facebook Ray-Ban glasses, the virtual reality, the car race seats and things like that. So those were things I did all throughout my life. And that's what drove me into my field. And also I think the educational system too can also try, maybe in the secondary school area and also in university, they can introduce a few of these gadgets during labs. That way individuals who are coming up can see hands-on of what those technology feels like to get a better hand. When I was in high school, which I think secondary school here, when I was in secondary school back in the US, I was actually manufacturing phones and putting phones together. That was my first introduction of how a phone can work. And before I graduated, I was also working with writing codes, putting the assembly line and microchips. So that gave me experience right in secondary school that allowed me to pick engineering and IT for my college degree to pursue that. So those are things I think the government can do.
Okay, now I would also like to ask, how are emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and blockchain likely to impact lives in the future? What's the general benefit of technology in a few years to come?
So there's a disadvantage and there's always an advantage. And you want to go more for the advantage. Disadvantage is when you get more engaged, you rely heavy on technology, you kind of lose touch of personal sense of belonging and having that physical interaction. I know back in the days, you used to write letters, and post mails and things of that nature. And you wait for that letter to come and you kind of cherish it. Now you could just send a text message, right, without even worrying about that. So there is an advantage and disadvantage. But in the new world that we live in, the advantage is having data faster and making, for a business case, having real data real time, you can allow your business to think faster and know how to manage resources. One example, if you know you're gonna have 200 customers coming every Wednesday and you need at least 20 staff to beef it up, but the very next day, you're seeing the traffic slowly goes down. You don't want to have too many employees on site without enough clients to take care of them for that day. So based on technology, you can kind of see how many staff you're getting day by day, how many customers are coming through your doors or even using your service. And based on that, you can now decide if to beef up more staff or reduce your staff on a particular given day. So that is one advantage we've seen technology come. Another area we've seen AI especially is when you look at all these chat bots, I don't know how many companies are doing that here, but in Nigeria, but in the US, we used to have a lot of customer service text you back and forth. So most of those frequently asked questions have now been embedded into a chat box. So when you chat with a company right now, the first thing is the AI that speaks to you. Based on questions being asked, it speeds back the answer to you. Eventually, if it cannot answer your question, that's when it transfers you to a live operator. So those are the advantage of having AI introduced in your business and in the world.
Right. Now, we have looked at the advantage, and I would like for us to look at something that has, caused a scare for a lot of youth as well in this, with the emergence of technology and as it keeps progressing, and that is automation and job displacement, in the sense that a lot of people are scared that technology, for example, AI, is here to take away people's jobs. So you see people that work in customer care, for example, robots can now do that. People who do visual art, robots can do that as well, writing scripts and basically almost everything. And there's that fear that in the next few years, more people will lose their jobs to AI. What's your thought?
So yeah, some jobs are going to be lost. That's just the nature of what we live in, right? Back in the days, we saw how many mail carriers were frequent. Now you don't see a lot of mails. You see more dispatches, right? Because of parcels and stuff like that. So what I always tell people is, don't be afraid of what you're going to lose. Look at what you stand to gain. The world is changing. You don't want to get left behind, right? You see companies embedding this technology into their process. In agriculture right now, you have technology equipment that tells you how often to actually water your lawn, your veggies, not just anytime. It gives you that temperature. It tells you when to water it and how much water to pour into the land. So that it's coming. It's here already. We are not going back to the Stone Age. The best advice is, rather than looking from a fear standpoint of losing your job, but look at how that has been infused in your field of studies or your industry, either healthcare, pharmaceutical, education, and see how can you work and build your knowledge in those areas so you will be employable in the very near future.
Right. Now, also talking about, the advantages and disadvantages, we're also looking at the lack of adequate education, like you did mention earlier, for these youths. A lot of people are reluctant to accept technology because they do not know about technology. But if you're looking at the difference between African countries and some other Western countries, even those who are willing to accept, or go into tech, they do not have necessary equipment or infrastructure. You talked about electricity and things like that. What can the government do to encourage acceptance of tech and going into tech generally?
I think one of the areas the government can come in is have more tech hub sponsored by the government, where individuals can come in and train and get better equipment. If you have a company like Cisco or these big firms that come to the U.S., mandate them to have some portion allocated to do free training or having the resources needed to help the youth. So that's where I think the government can come in and help in those areas, because individually it's hard to really sponsor those things over long term, but the government can actually make allocations for those things.
So what are certain government policies that are made available in other countries that we do not have in Africa that enables these people in other countries to fully harness their tech skills?
Well, number one, when a company wants to do a partnership with either the federal government or the state, like in the U.S., some rally around that could tell them, okay, you want to make sure this contract you're getting, 10% is invested back into the economy, into that region. And that consists of a bunch of different things. It could be providing housing, it could be providing training. So one of the things that individuals can rally for, if you see a new company coming into the country or to your region, you can work with the local government or the federal government and ask them to have some portion allocated for training, thereby beefing up the skills of those locally to those areas.
All right, on that note, we are going to wrap up this segment. Thank you so much, Otis Umude, the CEO, IFEM International, and of course, creator of Go Speed Hub. Thank you for your insights on the world of tech, and we do hope that more youths embrace, the emergence of technology, and that the government helps to nurture, the interest in tech as well. Thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, you're still watching for Fanwa Africa. When we come back, we're going to look at something a bit different. Stick around. Thanks for staying with us on Fafano Africa. Now, before the break, we did talk about the usefulness of technology in today's world and the need for the youth to embrace it more. And we figured out that the reason that a lot of youth are reluctant to embrace technology or even dabble into it is because they do not have enough education or enough awareness about technology in itself. And even those who are interested and have the awareness, they do not have enough infrastructure or equipment or gadgets or even electricity available to them to explore the world of technology. And thanks to my guest, he did do justice to that. And we're hoping that more people can embrace the usefulness of technology. But on the other note, we're going to be talking about something that has become a very disturbing trend on the African continent especially. It's a global problem, but Africa is having it hot with this particular issue. And we're talking about the problem of suicide on the African continent. This is a deeply troubling and a complex issue that demands our immediate attention and our immediate action. The recent tragic incident, for example, of a woman who took her own life in a bank in Lagos is just one example of the alarming increase in suicide rates across the continent. It's a stark reminder of the urgent need to address the underlying causes and provide support for those who are struggling with mental health issues. Now, according to the World Health Organization, Africa has the largest or highest rate of deaths by suicide in the world, with approximately 11 people per 100,000 per year taking their own lives. This is significantly higher than the global average of 9 persons per 100,000 people. These statistics paint a bleak picture of the mental health crisis that is unfolding in Africa, and it is very, very important that we take proactive measures to address this pressing issue. Now, I would have given a statistics of the suicide rate alongside how people take their lives, but that's just going to be me enabling it, so I'm not going to do that. But in the meantime, I'm going to be joined by my guest, Ifeoluwayimika Bamidele. He's a mental health advocate and associate professor, health law, Afe Babalola University at Doekiti. Thank you so much, Ifeoluwayimika, for joining us, and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, blessings. It's good to be on the channel.
It's a pleasure to have you join us once again. Now, Ifeoluwa, we're talking about the rate at which people commit suicide these days. I think it was 3 or 2 days ago that we heard the news about the lady who committed suicide in the toilet of her office in a bank. And someone did say, although the person said it, on a lighter note, that if someone who had a job could commit suicide because things were tough, or she wasn't meeting up with the expectations and there was so much more expenses than she was earning, what would people who do not even have jobs do? So I'm looking at the high suicide rates in Africa. What is your take? What do you think? What's your opinion on the level at which people are committing suicide on the African continent, especially youth?
The numbers are very, very grim. But much more than just the numbers is we need to address the issue as one of significant importance as a continent, as a nation, and as a world at large. If you look at the statistics, we will see that it is not just the number of persons who end their life by suicide or who die by suicide. It is also the number of people who attempt. So it means that according to the WHO, for every one successful, there are about 20 unsuccessful attempts. So if you compare that with the numbers of persons who die by suicide, you already know that we have a big challenge on our hands, and all stakeholders must necessarily begin to look at solutions on a case-by-case basis and then on a broader spectrum. So we have a challenge, and it's a multifaceted one. However, I think that now that we are seeing it, now that we are addressing it, we begin to look at the how to be able to solve it. It will not be nice that we keep quiet. It is the right thing that you're doing as a channel and as a platform to talk about it. It is one of the ways by which we can attain solutions.
So, Ifeoluwayimika, what would you say are the primary contributing factors of the high rate of suicide in Africa?
For Africa, one of the things that we have heard is that our mental health is not given sufficient attention. So it means that some of the symptoms or signs, for example, when people talk about these things. One of the behavioral signs is when people talk about suicide. And you know that we talk about a lot of things here, and a colleague in the office can just talk to you and say, do you know that I'm so tired of this life, I even want to end it? And you will just laugh over it and say, oh no, I'm sure that you won't end your own life. And we will wave it off. Something that you were supposed to, a cue that you were supposed to take, a behavioral pattern that has changed, strange behaviors, or something that you have noticed in a particular person. So one of the important things is that we need to take our mental health a bit more seriously. Access and affordability for mental health services is an important factor in reducing the number of persons who die by suicide, for suicide prevention. One of the things we must also look at is also the economic challenges that people face in low and middle income countries. Because if you look at the statistics or the data, it shows that there are more persons who die by suicide in low and middle income countries. So the level of professionalism or the trainings that go on, as well as the economic realities that people are facing, is making it more difficult for us who are trying to prevent suicide and talk to people about keeping hope alive.
All right. And how would you say that, you did talk about dismissing the conversation because maybe we're not aware that some of these people convey their intentions in the most subtle manner. I'm going to ask, my question is going to be in two parts. First, how do we break the stigma that surrounds mental health that enables people to come out fully and express how they're feeling? And even when they feel suicidal, they can talk to someone about it so the person can talk them out of it. And then how do we ensure or educate people to understand that when people say things, we do not just trivialize, the conversations we have with people, we read meaning into it so we can pick when someone is, feeling suicidal without having to expressly, come out and say it.
So one of the important things is what you are doing as a channel, which is talking. That's step one. We started the conversation. What used to happen before now was that people used to mention suicide in hushed tones. So it was a discussion that people would mute and talk about very quietly, not discuss very sufficiently enough. But in the last few years, we've had workplaces have trainings. We've had corporate groups and organizations have professionals who have come in to be able to talk to them and then identify signs. One of the things I've also campaigned for with accessibility and affordability is to include mental health services as part of primary health care and as well as part of medical insurance. So if your medical insurance at your workplace includes mental health services, it becomes easier for people to be able to access mental health services. With discrimination or the type of situations that we find ourselves with in Nigeria, one of the things that we even need to learn is the language. For example, the decriminalization of suicide is one of the things that we have been talking about over a period of time. At this time, the word commit with suicide is from the idea that suicide is a crime. And so in other parts of the world, we're talking about dying by suicide and other forms of expressing the circumstance or the situation, rather than say that people commit. And so it becomes more easier for people to be able to express themselves, easier for people to be able to access mental health services, and for people who have been affected, for persons who have suicidal ideations or who have had a failed attempt, for them to also be able to utilize mental health services.
Okay. Thank you, Ifeoluwa. We're going to we're going to put it on hold. Please hold your thought. We want to check out some of the tweets that we have regarding suicide to see what people are saying about it, and then we'll continue the conversation. Now, Tupper said, this morning I addressed my teachers since I saw the picture of the banker who committed suicide. I'm not paying you up to 60K, but please, if there's anything you're passing through, let me know. Let us go around and solve the problem together. Let's look out for one another. That's so thoughtful. Now, Ugochukwu says, I just came across a post about a young female banker who committed suicide as a result of the troubles in her life. It is true that life has become very difficult, especially in this part of the world. However, no matter what you're passing through, remember, suicide is never an option. Suicide creates more problems than solutions. Now, Benny James says, here is a little reminder. 84 men commit suicide a week. 75% of all suicides are male. Men are less likely to get help. Men are more likely to get shamed for showing emotions to mental health. Over 6 million men suffer from depression every year. Always speak up, lads. If it's depression, anxiety, stress, panic attacks, addiction, etc., you matter. You speaking up will save lives and bring awareness to not just yourself, but to other men around the world. You are not alone. Now, someone else says, can I just say this? My mom committed suicide, and believe me, it's not better for everyone, yourself included, if you do this. I'm 25 years into living after her. Many times I felt how she felt, and then I look around and realize how much she has missed. She has grandkids now. Okay, so Ifeolu Ayimika, I'm going to take it up from where the penultimate tweet, where the person was saying something about the statistics of men who commit suicide. Do you think that society is still at that point where they criticize men for being, vocal about how they feel? I know that there was a time where there was so much expectation from the men, especially, you have to provide, you have to work for yourself, you have to earn a decent living, you have to do this and do that. And even when you have your family, you have to be all out there for them. But do you think that we're still at that point where we shame men and then we try to push them to the wall, and at the end of the day, we dismiss their feelings or do not even, or we see them as weak when they express themselves?
Let me say that men are very challenged because of the expectation of society. However, it is not just men anymore. It is responsibility. So whilst men are under pressure because they are traditionally providers, we have had many families now who have women who are also responsible breadwinners of their families, women who have to take care of their siblings, of their children, and sometimes of their parents. So yes, men find it really hard to be able to express themselves. Terms like man up, stand up to it, you are a man. You should be able to man this situation. You should be able to go through this as a man. Those are things that have affected men across the world. However, it is not just men anymore. And that's why I always refer to the WHO methods on living life. WHO comes up with LIFE strategy, talking about 4 things that is expected, whether you're a man or whether you're a woman, on some of the things that you can do, limiting access to means of suicide. One of the things is the interaction with the media, which is one of the things that we're currently doing now, talking to people about it, giving information, giving hope. One of the other things is fostering life skills for young people, whether you're a man or you're a woman.
Now, Ifeoluwa, I'm going to ask, we've talked about what people can do, what friends, family can do, but what resources would you say are available for those who are struggling with mental health issues in Africa?
There are mental health professionals in most health facilities in Nigeria and in many parts of Africa as well. However, there are also what I call mental health first aid tools that people can utilize. For example, just recently I went for a painting event, and I have like a small painting book as well that I now use in the course of the year. And one of my friends asked, why have you taken to painting very recently? And I said, for my own health, not just for my physical health, but for my mental health as well. So there are some little things that we can do as individuals, as groups, as corporations that can help us to bond, that can help us to express ourselves more, and then importantly, mental health professionals that are available. But like I said earlier, the mental health professionals that are available need to be more trained. They also need to be accessible and then to be affordable. Some organizations have also offered their services for free as mental health NGOs. And so we encourage that those NGOs should be supported by governments, by corporations, by individuals, such that when people require these services and cannot afford the services, they will be supported by these organizations. Some of them exist in our localities, they exist in some of the major cities in Nigeria and as well as other parts of Africa. They are encouraged, people are encouraged to reach out to some of these groups, to some of the professionals, some of the individuals, get someone. And in some places, we're already beginning to have what we call befriending services, where you are able to speak to someone either free of charge or for a fee. And so every opportunity that people have to be able to do something towards improving their own mental health, but most importantly, is the ability to be able to speak out and for us to be able to acknowledge importantly that this is a major killer. This is one of the top 5 reasons why people end their lives end. So if this is one of the reasons where lives end in hundreds of thousands across the world in a year, then that means that this is something to look at and this is something to address urgently as a group, as an individual, as a workplace. I keep emphasizing workplaces because of the pressure in workplaces, which is one of the reasons that people are giving, as well as governments should think of the economic impact of their decisions. This will help us in keeping more people alive. But like I said, LIFE, and importantly, is the early signals and early identification as well as support for everyone who is affected.
Okay, my final question is going to be, how can we promote resilience and coping strategies for these people in the face of adversity and hardship? Because to be honest, looking at the economy of the country, it's not so far-fetched to see a lot of people getting into depression. So how can we help them become more resilient and, fight this challenge together with others?
I hope that my LIFE comes out really straight here. One of them is, like I said, which is with limiting access to the things. If you want to make a decision and you don't have access to the thing, it may change your decisions may change. But importantly is the F in that LIFE, which is fostering skills. One of the things that you have mentioned is that resilience, our coping skills, coping mechanisms, our keeping hope alive. And that's why all of the measures, all of the systems that we have, you have inspirational speakers, support systems, workplace, religious groups and organizations, religious leaders and their comments, family and friends. These are important things that can help us foster life skills of young people. And at the beginning of this session today, you spoke to someone who was talking about technology, tech, improving your skills. These are some of the things that can also change your financial capacity. And so those who are making this decision because of economy may now have new hope. They may now have new decisions to make. They may now have a new vista to life. And importantly, the media has the responsibility of responsible reporting, talking about these things, talking about them in the light where you make people see the need to stay alive, to live life, and to continue to have hope. So my word or charge to anyone who is listening today is that there is hope for you, and that seek help with a professional if you are affected. You don't necessarily have to have ended your life by suicide to be affected. You might have had suicide ideations. You might have somebody who is a friend, who is a colleague, who you are worried about, a family member, your child, your neighbor, and you might want to get involved. So speak to a professional, speak to a mental health facility, and then this can be resolved. We don't want them to be part of the statistics. We want them to love life and to live life. Thank you very much.
All right, that's a good note to end it. Ifeoluwa Yimika Bamidele, mental health advocate and associate professor, health law, Afe Babalola University. Thank you so much for joining us to discuss this very, very pivotal issue. And we do hope that this issue is furthermore spotlighted in our society to help people who are going through it at the time. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much. Stay alive.